The biggest misconception, probably the most dangerous misconception, is that Hitler rose up as a madman. And everybody was crazy and unhinged, and they all worshipped Hitler. Now, it is partially true that people worshipped Hitler. Not everybody worshipped Hitler, but there was definitely a cult of personality surrounding Adolf Hitler, and people revered him as if he was a divine figure sent by God. But the most dangerous misconception is that Adolf Hitler rose up as this madman. Hitler was not a madman. Hitler was very intelligent, and he was too intelligent to put his motivations and his intentions and his ultimate mission on paper. Right now, I am reading this book on the Third Reich. It's called The Third Reich by Michael Burleigh. Michael Burleigh is one of the topmost scholars on the history of the Holocaust and the history of the Third Reich. He is up there in the top list of Holocaust historians. And even he says that there is really, really scant evidence showing a direct order from the Third Reich to genocide the Jews. There really isn't any direct, there is a little bit, but there really isn't serious direct evidence where you can see the Third Reich on paper saying, go out and kill every single Jew that you can find. Most of our evidence, the great majority of our evidence of the Holocaust, comes from the Nuremberg trials. Why? Because the Nazis were not stupid. They weren't sitting there writing on their typewriters, oh yes, kill all the Jews, kill them wherever you find them. Hitler wasn't stupid. The Nazis weren't stupid. And one thing that I find, and this is so terrifying. One thing that I have noticed over the years is that evil people are more cunning and they can be more intelligent than good people. Good people usually are docile. A lot of good people are naive. A lot of good people are easy to take advantage of. A lot of good people are very trusting. It's Cain versus Abel. A lot of evil people are more conniving, cunning, and intelligent than good people. It's Cain versus Abel. Cain went to his brother and said, oh, brother, let's go for a walk. And Abel trusted his brother, and Cain murdered his brother. It's Cain versus Abel. The Nazis were not stupid. They weren't madmen. They were evil, but they weren't insane. They were master criminals. And like any master criminal, they weren't sitting there blabbering about their ultimate goals and intentions in their correspondence. They weren't sitting there writing on paper, yes, go out and kill all the Jews. And that's why the great majority of the evidence for the Holocaust comes from the Nuremberg trials, and it comes from people who survived the reign of terror of the Third Reich. And that is the reality of the Nazis. That's the reality of how conniving they were. They were very, very good at covering their tracks. Very good at it. They were scarily good at it. And people will sit there and act as if, or they will talk as if Hitler was this madman. No, they were very, very conniving. And the thing about the Nazis is that when they wrote their orders, so when we actually look at evidence directly from the Third Reich for the killing of the Jews, what we find is orders that go something like this. Go out and kill Bolshevik leaders. Go out and kill members of the Communist Party. Go out and kill Bolsheviks. Well, who is a Bolshevik? And how do you define Bolshevik? What was the criteria for Bolshevik? And so they would send these vague orders. They didn't say, go out and kill this specific person. They would say, go out and kill Bolsheviks. And this was when the Germans were invading the Soviet Union. Go out and kill Bolsheviks. Well, who is a Bolshevik? Is it any Russian that was alive in Russia? Was it any Jew? Well, here's the thing. In Nazi rhetoric, Jew was synonymous with Bolshevik. Jew was synonymous with communist. And so when they found a Jew, well, he must be a communist. And that's how they thought. So they would kill all the Jews that they would find because Jew was synonymous with Bolshevik. And this is how the Nazis were trying to get away with it. Because you can't find a direct order from the Third Reich saying, kill every Jew that you find. Kill them wherever you find them. You can't find it. What you find is orders saying to go out and kill communists. And in those days, everybody was talking about fighting communists and fighting communism. Communism was the big threat for the Western world. It was the big threat. And so the Nazis were saying, hey, we're invading the Soviet Union to fight communists and to fight communism. And so what you find in the paperwork, in the letters from the Third Reich, in the written orders from the Third Reich is, go out and kill communists. Go out and kill communists. But in Nazi rhetoric, that translated to go out and kill Jews, because Jew was synonymous with Bolshevik and communist. Now, what do we see today? What do we see today? Arab is synonymous with terrorist. So the Israelis who want to go out and commit genocide, the Israelis who want to go out and kill Arabs, what do they always say? I'm not saying all Israelis are this way, but what do Israelis who want to commit genocide say? We want to stop terrorism. We want to stop terrorists. We want to kill terrorists. Well, who's a terrorist? Can the criteria be flexible? Can the criteria be changed on a whim? Who is a terrorist? And once you start thinking that way, well, Arab becomes synonymous with terrorist. And it reminds me of the story of the killing of Iyad al-Halik. Iyad al-Halik was murdered by an Israeli soldier in May of 2020. He was a severely autistic Palestinian man who was in his early 30s, and he was walking to school with his teacher. This teacher was walking him to school. He was a special needs student. He was a special needs man. And the teacher was walking him to school, and two soldiers stopped him and said, hey, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And the young man was frightened. He ran away, and the soldiers cornered him in an alleyway. And the senior officer present said what? He said, don't shoot him. Do not shoot him. And the other Israeli soldier broke orders and killed this young man. And the soldier got away with it. Why? How did the soldier get away with it? Well, I thought he was a terrorist. Oh, okay. I thought he was a terrorist. And you know, he's an Arab. And so I had every right to be suspicious. I thought he was a terrorist. And what happened? The mother of Iyad al-Halik confronted Itamar Ben-Gvir, the fanatic Israeli politician, and she brought up the fact that her son was killed unjustly. And what did Itamar Ben-Gvir tell the mother of Iyad al-Halik? Itamar Ben-Gvir said, terrorist, you're a terrorist. He told this mother, the mother of this young man who was killed unjustly, you are a terrorist. Because in the minds of these people, and by people I mean these fanatics, Arab is synonymous with terrorists. And what do a lot of these Israeli nationalist types like to say? There are no innocents in Gaza. There are no innocents in Gaza. Well, let's rewind back to the Second World War. Go out and kill communists. Well, communism was a threat, absolutely. Communism was evil, absolutely. The Soviet Union was killing lots of people, absolutely. In fact, the Soviet Union was worse than Hamas in some ways. The Bolsheviks were worse than Hamas. The Bolsheviks killed millions of people. They were doing horrendous massacres. They were slaughtering priests. It was pretty damn nightmarish to be under the Bolsheviks, especially if you were a Christian. And people in America hated communists. They hated communism. People in the Western world hated communism for the most part. The Germans definitely hated communism. And so the Germans were saying, we are fighting against an evil ideology, an evil regime. We're going to go out and fight communists. And there were a lot of communists who so happened to be Jewish. And so Jewish became associated with communism. And so they said, we're going to go invade the Soviet Union, this evil empire, as Ronald Reagan called it, this evil empire, and we're going to go fight communists. And people, for the most part, didn't know that there was a Holocaust taking place. They didn't know this. And so at the surface, it seemed that what the Nazis were doing was just. They were fighting communists. Go out and fight communists. They didn't say on paper, go out and kill Jews. But because Jew was synonymous with communist in their way of thinking, they massacred the Jews throughout Eastern Europe. And here is the thing that almost no one understands. The fact is that most people today would have supported Hitler. All these right-wingers today, a lot of these Christians in America, all of these lunatics in Florida who worship the ground that I'm about to say a bad joke, but they worship the ground that Donald Trump walks on. They worship the ground that any Israeli politician, any right-wing Israeli politician pisses on. Florida's full of lunatics. These people would have supported Adolf Hitler. All of these right-wing lunatics that you see in America, a lot of these conservatives in America, a lot of evangelicals and Christians and trad Catholics in the Western world would have supported Adolf Hitler. This is a fact, and I will die on this hill. How do I know this? Because when the Nazis were invading the Soviet Union, these were master criminals. And what are master criminals really good at? They're really good at hiding their tracks. They're really good at masquerading their intentions behind good moral declarations. And so they were telling people, we're out to fight the Red Army, the evil commies. And so people today, if they lived back in those days, they would have been saying, oh my God, the Nazis are doing the righteous, just thing, fighting these murderous communists. And they would have fallen for the trap. But behind the rhetoric against communism was the motivation to commit mass murder. And so when they said, we're going to go out and fight commies, what they were trying to say, what they really were saying was, we're going to go out and kill Jews. And Arab, in many ways, has become synonymous with terrorist. We're going to go out and fight terrorists. Well, who's a terrorist? And look at the AI program that the Israelis are using to find targets. They're using an AI program called Lavender. And what they do is they put criteria in the system so that Lavender can find targets. And they use people's internet histories. They use people's chat histories on their phone. They're using their intelligence data, putting it in the system, and then allowing the system to determine who is a legitimate target. And they trust the system, even though they know that the system has a 10% margin of error. So they use this AI system. And when they have no targets, here is the thing that's so disturbing. When they have no targets, the people who are running the apparatus for killing terrorists, they're getting calls from their superior officers saying, find targets. Well, Lavender has stopped providing targets based on the criteria that we put in the system. And they will order these men to lessen the criteria. They will order these men to change the criteria. And the criteria for terrorists all of a sudden becomes more flexible. They will put less information so that the number of targets increases. So who's a terrorist? Who's a terrorist? All of a sudden, it could be just some young man who's slow in the mind like Iyad al-Halik. All of a sudden, someone like Iyad al-Halik, who's severely autistic, can be suspected of being a terrorist and shot and killed. Oh, let's look at another story. Let's look at the story of David ben Avraham. David ben Avraham was a Palestinian who converted to Judaism. His birth name was Sameh Zaitoun. Sameh Zaitoun converted to Judaism to honor his grandfather because his grandfather rescued Jews during the 1925 massacre that was done on the Jews, the 1929 Hebron massacre that was done by Arabs against Jews. So to honor his grandfather, Sameh Zaitoun converted to Judaism. He got arrested by the Palestinian Authority because he converted to Judaism. He was tortured in a Palestinian prison. He was severely beaten to the point where he had to be reduced to a wheelchair for some time. And what happened last month? What happened late last month in March? Sameh Zaitoun was murdered by an IDF soldier because the IDF soldier suspected that he was a terrorist. He got out of a cab. The cab had a Palestinian license plate. He was stopped at the bus stop by a soldier. He was asked, "Are you a Jew?" You can see it in the body cam footage. "Are you a Jew?" He says, "Yes, I'm a Jew." He officially converted. His conversion was official. It was formalized by the government. He was officially Jewish. And the soldier said, "Are you a Jew?" He said, "Yes, I'm a Jew." And you can see from the security footage, this soldier executing this man. He had his hands up. He had no gun on him. He was not violent. He was not aggressive. He was acquiescing to the soldier's orders. His hands were up, and the soldier murdered him. And the soldier got away with it. The court, because the guy was put on trial, the court said, "You're not guilty. You're not guilty." And what did the judge say? The judge said, well, Sameh Zaitoun, even though he was completely innocent, Sameh Zaitoun had an Arab accent. And so that somehow justified the soldier's aggression. And that somehow was an excuse for the soldier taking an innocent man's life. Why? Because in the paradigm, in the mindset of a lot of these people, Arab means automatically suspected of being a terrorist. So Arab becomes synonymous with terrorist. Just like in the Third Reich, Jew was synonymous with communist. And that's the danger. And the reality is, this is why I say, all these people today who are right-wing and they're super pro-Israel and they're, "Oh yeah, we love Trump," and they're super conservative and we hate communism. All these people would have supported Hitler. They all would have supported Adolf Hitler. Why? Because they're so fanatical that they will make excuses for evil regimes. They will make excuses for evil policies. They will make excuses for evil, diabolical behavior and actions because their bias is so strong and their dedication to their political football team is so zealous and so unhinged that when they see their side doing something evil, they will make an excuse for it. So if these people were alive in the 1920s and they were seeing Hitler saying, "We're going to fight evil Bolshevism, evil communism," and then they saw the Third Reich army invading the Soviet Union in the name of fighting communism, they would have been Sieg-heiling. Why? Because the Nazis masqueraded their evil intentions behind fighting communism. And when they made orders to kill, they didn't say go out and kill every Jew you find. They didn't say go out and kill innocent civilians. They didn't say, on paper at least, to go out and just kill Jews at random. They said kill Bolsheviks, kill communists. Well, who's a communist? Who's a Bolshevik? The criteria changes. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.